Okay, let's jump right into this explainer and look at a scenario that is literally playing out in millions of homes right this very second. So a teenager posts a photo online. About 30 seconds later, they check their phone. Then they check it again. And in those tiny fleeting moments, they are strapped into an intense emotional roller coaster. They're noticing exactly who liked it, who ignored it, how incredibly fast that very first response arrived, and of course, they're actively checking to see if someone else's post is getting more attention. Suddenly, a notification pops up, and they get this brief, soaring lift. But then, the screen goes totally quiet.
And it's usually that exact moment of quiet that prompts a well-meaning parent to ask a deeply baffling question. Why do you care so much about a number? You know, we've all thought it. But here's the thing. To a teenager, it is never just a number. That little digital digit is profound. It's a literal measure of their social approval, their visibility, their sense of belonging. It's tangible, visible evidence that a social risk they just took was actually accepted by their peers. So today, we're going to break down exactly why these digital signals hold such incredible weight, and more importantly, what we can do to help teens navigate them.
Section 1. The psychology of social feedback. Let's shift gears for a second and look at the developmental science behind why adolescents are just naturally so hypersensitive to peer evaluation. Before social media, young people still cared deeply about approval, right? Obviously. But they measured it through these incredibly complex, nuanced cues, things like facial expressions, genuine laughter, being actively included in a conversation, or getting a physical invitation to hang out. Today's social platforms take all of that rich, complex social information and flatten it down into cold, visible counts: likes, views, followers, streaks. And the tricky part is, a count looks incredibly precise, but its actual meaning is totally ambiguous. Getting 10 likes doesn't tell a teen if the post was genuinely thoughtful, if their best friends actually cared, or if some random algorithm just decided to push the content out. So what happens is these platforms quantify a really complex social dance. Everyday features suddenly become profound emotional triggers. Think about it. Visible counts make social approval feel totally measurable. Notifications? They create this endless, buzzing anticipation. Peer endorsement suddenly makes whatever content is popular feel like the absolute social truth. And silence? Well, silence gets interpreted as outright rejection. Now, this sensitivity to peers isn't a flaw in teenagers. It's actually exactly what helps them learn to exist in a wider social world outside their family. The problem is just the platforms turn that natural, healthy sensitivity into a constantly measured, publicly compared stream of data.
Because of that, we absolutely have to bust a massive myth right here. We need to step away from simply calling all of this dopamine addiction or, some kind of mind control. Yes, experimental studies show that when teenagers see images with tons of likes, there's a spike in activity in the brain regions involved with reward processing, attention, and social information. That's true. But actually, scratch the idea that this proves every single like creates a clinical addiction or strips kids of their free will. A much more accurate way to look at this is that social endorsement is highly, highly meaningful information to a developing brain. The platforms just make that information unusually visible, immediate, and repeatable.
Section 2. Silence, uncertainty, and comparison. Okay, let's explore how a lack of notifications can actually hit just as hard as a flood of them. When a screen goes quiet, an anxious teenager does not just sit there and assume nothing is happening. To them, no response is a very loud, very direct response. They will immediately fill that silence with a negative explanation. They're thinking, wow, no one liked it, or they definitely saw it and just ignored me, or even, oh man, I should just delete this right now. The reality? Silence on an app has dozens of totally neutral causes. People might just be offline, the algorithm might not have shown the post. But when a teen is heavily invested, that uncertainty turns instantly into perceived rejection. This is exactly where we can step in and help them untangle an observable fact from an imagined social disaster.
And then we have the complete flip side of silence, the notification. A notification does way more than just deliver a piece of information. It announces that something might have changed. Someone might have replied. A friend might be waiting on you. And because the actual value of that notification is a total mystery until you look, it could be a meaningful text from a crush, or it could literally just be a coupon from a pizza place, it creates a massive, almost irresistible urge to check it quickly. The unpredictability makes it so hard to ignore. The phone doesn't even need to give them a real reward every time. Just the mere possibility of connection is enough to completely hijack their attention.
Now, even if the feedback is overwhelmingly positive, comparison can entirely ruin it. A teenager might get 100 views and feel absolutely on top of the world, until they scroll down and see a classmate's post with 10,000 views. Suddenly, their 100 views feel like nothing. The issue isn't that social comparison is new. We've always compared ourselves. The real issue is the scale, the relentless frequency, the extreme visibility, and the heavy curation. Young people are constantly comparing their own messy, everyday private lives against everyone else's most polished, perfectly curated public highlight reels.
Section 3, the 7-part action plan. We've dug into the heavy emotional stuff, so let's pivot to something really practical, a structured, totally non-judgmental plan to help build some digital resilience. Step 1 happens before their thumb even hovers over the post button. We need to ask kids what reaction they're actually hoping for. You can literally just ask, hey, whose reaction matters most to you on this one? Or, what are you going to think if the response is a bit smaller than you expect? It's such a simple pause, but it makes their internal emotional goals visible. It shifts them from being a passive scroller to a conscious, intentional creator. Next up, steps 2 and 3. We have to help them separate the sheer act of expressing themselves from the measurement of that expression. Help them figure out if they're posting to share something cool, to communicate, or just to save a memory. The post is meaningful even if the public count is tiny. Then, step 3, delay checking. Make a quick agreement to wait, say, 10 or 15 minutes after posting before they're allowed to open the app again. The whole goal here is to purposefully break that incredibly intense, immediate link between hitting post and obsessively monitoring the results. Moving into steps 4 and 5, this is where we tweak the environment to turn the volume down on the platform's signals. Step 4 is batching notifications. Get in there and turn off all those non-essential alerts and engagement prompts. Keep only the genuinely important communication. Step 5 is hiding public metrics when it makes sense. A lot of platforms actually let you hide like or view counts now. It won't magically erase all social anxiety, but it is a hugely powerful environmental tweak that stops direct numerical comparison in its tracks, especially if you notice those numbers are consistently tanking your kid's mood. All right, bringing it all together, we finish up our toolkit with steps 6 and 7. Step 6 is widening their sources of feedback. We need to encourage offline activities where feedback comes from genuine skill development, teamwork, or creativity. Basically, they need something other than a glowing screen telling them they have worth. And lastly, step 7, review the emotional result. Later in the day, just casually ask, hey, how did you feel when the phone was quiet for a bit? Or, did getting those comments change how you felt about the picture? The goal here is pure awareness. Keep it light, absolutely no interrogation allowed. Section 4. Redefining success and support. Finally, we need to hold a mirror up to ourselves and look at how we, the adults, might actually be reinforcing the exact metrics we want our kids to ignore. This is such a massive trap for parents. It is incredibly easy to hand out metric-based praise. We see a post doing well and we accidentally say, whoa, look at all those likes, or no way, your video is going viral. But think about it. Those comments implicitly teach a child that the public numbers are what really matter. Instead, we have to deliberately shift to person-based praise. Say things like, wow, you expressed your point so clearly, or you took a really awesome creative risk with that video. You don't have to ignore their online success, but you do need to make sure the metric doesn't become the only way they define that success. But we also need to be totally grounded in reality here and recognize when a household plan just isn't cutting it. A family strategy for notifications is not going to treat serious safety issues or mental health crises. If you are seeing severe mood swings, panic, compulsive checking that stops them from functioning, school avoidance, major sleep disruption, or if they are dealing with cyberbullying, actual threats, or coordinated exclusion, you have to step in. That's when you remove the immediate danger and bring in qualified mental health or healthcare professionals. Which leaves us with one final overarching question for you to chew on. Is your child building more than one mirror? Because the ultimate goal of all of this isn't to create a teenager who never cares what their friends think. That's biologically impossible and honestly, socially a bad idea. The real goal is to make sure they are building rich, solid offline sources of confidence. That way, when they inevitably do get social feedback online, a platform's totally random, fluctuating numbers never have the power to define who they are. So, take a look at your family's digital habits tonight and ask yourself, are the screens in your house just tools for connection, or have they become the only mirrors your kids are using to see themselves? Thanks so much for joining this explainer. We will see you next time.